Have you ever stopped to think that the change you so desperately await in your city, your neighborhood, or even your workplace, can start with an action of your own? Today, we will show you how a courageous leader turned a crisis into an opportunity, inspiring everyone to act. Come along.
It is fundamental that we get involved with public governance and constantly seek improvements in the services offered to the community. We must not be passive, waiting for others to do what is within our reach. Change begins when we take responsibility and work together. Therefore, I encourage you to get involved and even seek office through democratic election to strengthen our commitment to the common good. Now, listen to the story of Miriam, a leader who proved that integrity and courage can transform realities. Apollo, tell us about this journey.
Miriam was an elected city council member in a large city. Her election was celebrated as a breath of renewal, with the promise of bringing real change to the lives of citizens, especially the most vulnerable. Intelligent, sober, and with an tireless passion for social justice, Miriam came from a political background that began with mobilizing community causes. From a young age, she felt a vocation to fight for the development of all citizens, with special care for the less fortunate, and her politics were aimed at the most humble, those who requested more attention from public authorities. Now in the position of city council member, she found herself facing the biggest challenge of her political life, a terrible financial crisis that threatened the foundation of everything the city needed for self-determination, such as essential services for health, education, and security. The crisis was severe. The municipal coffers were compromised by the services, and resources were scarce. Citizens, from the poorest to the most affluent, were affected, seeing their rights being disrespected. It was in this scenario that a series of speculative business owners began pressuring the Legislative Assembly to approve a package of tax exemptions. The proposal seemed tempting to many of her colleagues who would, in turn, receive substantial donations for the council members' next campaigns. The business owners could receive exemptions that would only benefit them and another privileged layer of society. This would mean another great opportunity to profit from the city's financial chaos, leaving the citizens to fend for themselves. But Miriam knew that this strategy would bring very bad consequences for the people. She knew the harsh realities of the system, knew that the tax exemption would mean more cuts to essential services and the aggravation of the crisis. It would be a decision that would benefit some, but the cost could be disastrous for the majority. She also knew that yielding to corporate pressure would mean losing the trust of the population, who elected her with the hope of a fairer policy. However, this choice would not be simple. Miriam found herself torn between the idealism of her promises and the harsh reality of politics. Her party colleagues, who saw the business owners' pressure as inevitable, advised Miriam to yield, arguing that it was just this once. The atmosphere in the assembly was tense, and many of her allies, fearful of losing political support, began to suggest she make concessions. It's better to give in now to secure the future, they said. But Miriam, faithful to her principles, remembered the words of her grandfather, a man of great values who had raised her. Justice is not an easy path, but it is the only one that leads to peace. Determined to seek a solution that was ethical and that would truly make a difference for the people, Miriam sought counsel. She met with economists who could help chart an alternative, and also with community leaders who represented the citizens' interests. She knew she needed a solid strategy, but also the courage not to yield to the great external pressures. One morning, she met with an old university professor of ethics, a good friend and also her mentor. He told her something that was marked in her heart: the decision you make now will be more than political. It will be a lesson in character for everyone who follows you. Together, they developed an alternative plan that involved cutting superfluous government spending, increasing the transparency of actions, and finding a creative way to secure resources for essential services. The most audacious solution was the creation of an emergency committee, with people from various government sectors, in addition to civil society volunteers, to control daily expenses and provoke the necessary reductions in expenditures, with total transparency on how resources would be managed. It was a risky plan, but Miriam knew it was the only option that respected the principles of justice and dignity. When she presented the proposal to the assembly, the reactions were immediate and intense. Some colleagues accused her of putting the city at risk, claiming that the lack of tax exemptions would cause the total collapse of the local economy. "You're going to sink us," shouted one of the enraged council members. But Miriam remained firm, unfazed by the pressure. She knew that this was the only way to guarantee the integrity of municipal politics and, deep down, believed that God was guiding her in this decision. Miriam then stood up and gave a passionate speech, quoting a verse from Proverbs 29 verse 2, "When the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice, but when the wicked rule, the people groan. She emphasized the importance of governing with integrity and made an appeal for everyone to put the well-being of the population above personal interests. The vote was close, but Miriam's plan was approved by a small margin. The decision, although criticized by the media and the business owners, reflected her firm vision of governing with justice and transparency. In the following months, Miriam faced immense challenges. Many accused her of being naive, but she never lost faith in her plan. She connected the legislative and executive branches in the development of the plan, working tirelessly, visiting neighborhoods, listening to the population, adjusting actions as necessary. Miriam maintained a close relationship with community leaders, who helped ensure that the plan was administered effectively. To the surprise of many, results began to appear. The approved plan allowed the reopening of health clinics that had been closed, and the hiring of teachers for schools that were about to be deactivated. The transparency of the management attracted ethical investors who, unlike the speculators, committed to genuinely supporting the city. In a few months, the city began to recover. The positive impact of Miriam's decisions became evident. The city not only managed to overcome the financial crisis, but also began to reorganize itself in a fairer and more efficient way. Miriam, who was initially seen as an outsider, became a symbol of resistance and hope for many. In one of her speeches, Miriam reflected on her journey. Change does not come from those who stay waiting, but from those who act. And acting with integrity, even under pressure, is the greatest legacy we can leave. It doesn't matter what others say or do. Our responsibility is to the truth, to ethics, and above all to the people who trusted us. Miriam was not just a political representative, she was a true leader, showing that, when one acts with courage, wisdom, and justice, it is possible to change reality for the better. She was an example that, in times of crisis, it is ethics and the pursuit of the common good that must prevail, for, as the Bible teaches, the righteous govern with justice, and peace is the fruit of integrity. This story, although fictional, reflects the reality of many who find themselves in decision-making positions and face pressures contrary to the principles they defend. Miriam's journey serves as an inspiration for all those who wish to make a difference and act responsibly, without yielding to the temptations that arise along the way.
We will look at 3 passages that support Apollo's story. The first passage that guided Miriam, upon seeing herself alone facing such a difficult decision, was Proverbs chapter 15 verse 22, "Plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors they succeed." Wisdom is not born of isolation, but of the humility to seek advice. Miriam gathered community leaders, economists, and even an old ethics professor. Together, they found a path that did not betray the principles and integrity of public service. This verse teaches us that, in times of crisis, strength lies in unity and the diversity of ideas. Miriam did not act alone, she listened, reflected, and chose what was best for everyone. In this second passage, Proverbs chapter 29 verse 2, "When the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice, but when the wicked rule, the people groan." In fact, Miriam's leadership was a relief for her city and its citizens. At a time of pressures where corruption can arise, she chose justice. This verse reminds us that integral leaders are like a cool breeze on hot days. They do not seek their own benefits, but the common good. Miriam could have yielded to the pressures and gained personal advantages, but she preferred to be an example of righteousness. Her choice was not easy, but it brought hope. In passage 3 that corroborated Miriam's decision, we have John chapter 15 verse 16, "Miriam did not choose to be a leader, she was chosen to bear fruit." This verse reminds us that our mission is not just to occupy a position, but to transform realities. Miriam understood that her election was an opportunity to serve, not to serve herself. She planted seeds of honesty and harvested a fairer city. Now, Apollo will next bring us a deep reflection on how we can apply these lessons in our lives.
Miriam's story shows us that integrity is not just a virtue, but a daily choice. In a world where corruption and convenience often dictate the rules, Miriam opted for a more difficult, but more honest path. Her journey teaches us that true leadership is not measured by the power accumulated, but by the good disseminated. Miriam could have yielded to the pressures and gained immediate advantages, but she understood that her legacy would not be built on concessions, but built with convictions. And how are we building our legacy? When we face ethical dilemmas, it's easy to justify small concessions. It's just this once, we tell ourselves. But Miriam reminds us that every small concession is a step that moves us away from who we really want to be. Her story is an invitation to reflect. What are we willing to sacrifice in the name of integrity? If you are enjoying Think Strong, take a few seconds to like and subscribe. Hit the bell to not miss our next reflections. Your comment is very valuable. Share it. Together, we are building a space for growth and wisdom. Miriam's integrity not only strengthened her citizens but inspired others to act with courage. She shows us that when we act with justice, we create a ripple effect of hope. Strive and you will discover how you can be an agent of change in your environment. Whether in the workplace, at home, or in the community, each of us has the opportunity to choose between the easy and the right. Miriam chose the right, and her story challenges us to do the same. The video now appearing on the screen will show you how a new reflection can alter our daily lives. You will be surprised by the results. Thank you for being part of Think Strong. Together, we are building a path of growth and consciousness. See you in the next video, and remember, the world changes when we put in the effort.